This is week one reflections. Excuse my sniffling and coughing. I'm a little sick right now. So, as I think about what has been my journey as a student to this point in my life, I think about it as a child. I never liked school. I thought about, why didn't I like school? And I don't know. And I haven't liked school until now. Um, I know I'm fully here just to better my understanding of my kids and the whole urban education. Um, and I think about why I became a teacher. I think that there's kind of two types of teachers. There's teachers that became a teacher because they really like the curriculum, and if kids are better community members from that, so be it. Or there's teachers that really want to make better community members, and they use their curriculum as kind of a way to get that done. I think I'm more of the first, or I'm thinking more of the second teacher that, whatever curriculum I'm teaching, my number one priority is to make better community members out of the kids. As I think about my journey as an educator and my professional aspirations, it's unclear to me right now. I'm 25. I'll be tenured next year, so being a teacher is probably the safe kind of bet. But I think back to the old allegory people say is, the education system is like a river with kids floating down it, and as a teacher, I'm able to pull out, one kid as a couple more kids pass by, and then I'm able to pull out another kid. But a lot of people say, well, instead of pulling these kids out of the river, why not go up the river and see why the kids are getting put in the river, which is, a metaphor for the systemic racism and problems that have been created in our school that essentially put these kids in the river. So eventually in my life, I would like to see myself go up the river and kind of affect systems and the people in the systems more than probably the students. When I think about education and kind of metaphors I make for it, I like to take what I've learned from the Pacific Education Group, I think, and they talked about how our education system is kind of like a moving Segway, at an airport. And what happens is these teachers, if they're not doing anything, they're still moving kind of on that walkway. But it takes us to go against the walkway to kind of find any reform. And at that point, you're still not getting anywhere that quickly because you still have the systemic racism and issues kind of battling it as you move your way that way. So the metaphor I like to think of it as is a walkway, definitely. When I reflect on some of the readings that we've done with the reflective teaching, the first part of the readings, I really thought, yeah, all good teachers do this. I would think that you'd want to reflect, and I think that's instilled in good teachers is that they're constantly reflecting and refining from day to day and even period to period, which I think is a very big deal. But there was some other things that the reading brought up, talking about, teachers being uncomfortable in their classes with a lot of students that don't really look like them. And I was thinking that as, really the condition of, experienced discomfort. And I think about the culture of the teacher and the culture of the students usually isn't the same. And I think that's where it causes a lot of problems because these cultures are so different. I'm not even using color or culture as color here. I'm just talking about, for instance, my class or my school, I've seen students who are tapping their pencils, and teachers will say, hey, somebody in this room needs to stop tapping or needs to stop doing something. They're kind of vague, and the student will continue tapping, and the teacher again will say, all right, I've already asked this person once, can they please stop, doing what they're not supposed to be doing, and the kid still doesn't know they're talking to them. Well, then finally the teacher lashes out and talks to the student, says, "Hey, I told you 3 times, stop tapping your pencil." And the kid was like, "No, you never told me that. You, he's like, you never told me that." And then this is usually where the escalation rises, and I think that's just a culture piece that, um, I know that a lot of white collar workers is more of, let's think about how we can fix this problem, and blue collar is more of, hey, this is what's going on and you need to fix it. And I think that's kind of translates into the classroom in that aspect. This next section, I'm kind of going to go over to my notes, some interesting things that I found out while we're writing. Just all the socially constructed things that society has made up, such as, race, that there's essentially this invisible scale and everybody needs to fall on it somewhere of essentially how much pigment is in your skin. And people, and that was really hard for me to understand how race was socially constructed, but yeah, so that was something interesting to me. Another thing interesting about that is why race was the number one on the list. It's true because it's the number one, because it is a central issue. I think race intersects with everything, and as a white male, I understand that I have the privilege where I don't need to think about race until I'm asked about it. When talking with some of my friends of color, growing up, they talked about how they had to navigate their race and navigate their white culture and their culture, and that's something as a white male I just didn't need to think about ever. Looking more at my notes, I had something about the bank model and the problem posing model. The bank model where we just fill them up with knowledge and they do what they want with it, or the problem posing where they kind of formulate the questions, or as a teacher, you figure that out. I think that's more of I think the bank model is more of a teacher-centered learning, and the problem posing one is more of a student-centered learning, which I don't think anybody would argue that student-centered learning is the best, but it may not be easiest for teachers to do all the time. Looking at my educational philosophy, I believe that all kids can learn, and it's the teacher's job to get them all the tools they need to be successful. The teacher walking beside them, along with them, instead of kind of leading them. For kids to be successful, they need to see themselves daily in the curriculum with multiple learning opportunities. Finally, on my last page of notes, just a little bit of the IB talk we had with a high school student in class. I'm talking about just kind of the stigma that comes with the IB or the honors. It's majority of white students, and I think that's a problem we have in our education, is that there isn't a push for black and brown students into those high achieving classes, and that's all a part of the systemic racism. I mean, that's the media, that's just the problem in itself, the kind of nurturing. Um, I thought about, wouldn't it be interesting to have some type of questionnaire and ask it to our Asian or black or African and our white or Latino students, all, with the same GPA, the same background, and see how those answers would differ, because I think a lot of people would argue they would answer the same thing, because everything else is the same. Well, I think race plays a big part of that, and I think their answers would vary tremendously. As of right now, this is my reflections for week 1. I hope you enjoy, and week 2, hopefully my voice will be back. See you soon.